What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Pizza Buffet live here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network and powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I'm Rob Pizzola here with you for the next hour or so, breaking down today's NFL sides and totals. Before we get into it this week, I do want to talk about a lot of what's transpired over the course of the last day. Free 88 says, Rob looks cold. I'm freezing my balls off today. It is cold. Got a big snowfall in Toronto last night. Not looking forward to having to shovel the driveway. I got caught out last night with a bunch of the guys from Forward Progress and the Hammer in downtown Toronto. We were out watching Colts and Texans. Unfortunately, it happened to finish at the exact same time as the Travis Scott concert at Scotiabank Arena. So it took me a while to get home in traffic. I'm a little bit behind as of this morning, and part of the reason why as well, I made a ton of bets this week. There wasn't a lot for me to do this morning to get up early and take advantage of. So I'll break that down for everyone. But yes, certainly I am pretty cold today. Sweater, hat, and this is also to avoid showing the bed head as well, which is kind of all over. People think I don't have any hair. I do have hair. It just goes all over the place. Saturday's games. Steelers, Ravens, don't want to talk about that a whole lot. And again, before I get into this week's games, I just want to share some quick thoughts. Steelers, kind of hope they don't make the playoffs now just because you can see a game without TJ Watt. In all likelihood, not a very good team. Whatever. Good win for them on the road, but losing Watt is massive for that defense, especially if they can't get Minkah Fitzpatrick back next week. The Colts-Texans game. I just want to talk about this really quickly before we get into this week's games. And I hate groupthink. I'm not a big fan of people who just conform to the wide popular opinion. I think typically speaking, I like to make my own thoughts and share them, even if that's going to be in the minority. Shane Steichen, DeMeco Ryans. The aftermath today. DeMeco Ryans now moves to co-favorite with Kevin Stefanski in the Coach of the Year market. I do think DeMeco Ryans is going to win Coach of the Year. I don't think he's anywhere close to Coach of the Year. But again, lasting impression towards the end of the season, winning your in game in prime time. I think that matters a whole lot to voters. And the Texans were expected to be terrible this year. CJ Stroud has carried that team. I think it's very evident. If anything, I'd say DeMeco Ryans has helped CJ Stroud back a little bit too much this year, whether that's him or Bobby Slowick, I don't know. But towards the end of that game, yesterday, the final play and the fourth quarter, Shane Steichen's massive mistake was using the timeout on that 4th and 1, because you have basically two options there. You use a timeout and you have to get the 4th down no matter what, or you don't and you run a play that might be less effective because you don't have the timeout to plan it, but you have a chance to get the ball back, a second chance to try to win the game in some capacity. So using that timeout to me was brutal. And I think everyone who watched that in real time was like, what are they doing? They can't use a timeout here. And they did anyways. The play that followed the timeout was about as high a percentage play as you can possibly get. Now, you can have issues with the fact that Jonathan Taylor wasn't on the field. Jonathan Taylor was dealing with a heel injury. He actually made two boneheaded moves on previous runs going out of bounds as the Colts are trying to drain as much clock as possible. They had 2 outside runs. He went out of bounds on those. I don't know if that impacted it altogether. Zach Moss wasn't out there. It was Tyler Goodson. To me, part of the brilliance of that play was that it was Tyler Goodson, because if you watch the middle linebacker, when they snap the ball, he does not run out towards Tyler Goodson. He runs out towards the wide receiver to help double on the left side. Don't know which receiver it was, but they basically ignored Goodson. They had a free pass. Minshew didn't make the right throw. Goodson could have caught it. He dropped it. At the end of the day, you have to put some accountability on players. And you can say, okay, Tyler Goodson, why is he up? Tyler Goodson caught 70 balls when he was at Iowa. It's not like he's an NFL player with hands. Any running back should be able to catch. At some point, you got to make a catch. Minshew, you got to make a throw. They dialed up the right play to keep it going. That drive, the goal of that drive was to score a touchdown and take as much time off the clock as humanly possible. And they were well on their way to doing that. That's basically it. And it's funny because like people are like, they ran the ball too much or whatever. They have to drain clock. If you give the ball back to CJ Stroud with 3 timeouts left, it's over. The Colts defense isn't stopping it. Everyone knows that. So at some point, I think you got to put the accountability on the players. I like Steichen. I think the timeout was a disaster. Horrible. Flame him for that. But ultimately, they got a great look. They got a look that is going to convert that 4th down so often. Then they force the Texans into using timeouts if that 4th down is converted, and they go for their end zone shot, which, by the way, is not a foregone conclusion with that Colts red zone offense as well. But that's it. I mean, that's my thoughts on that. So I don't like, like Steichen's great. He's fine. Like look at the Colts on paper. Look at the roster that they have. And even try to figure out how this team is even possibly making the playoffs right now. They don't rush the passer well. Their secondary stinks. They have some of the worst offensive weapons in the entire league. They have a backup quarterback. Like, it's nonsensical that they're even in this position. Easy schedule, sure. But at the end of the day, I thought he did a great job. And I'd criticize him much more for the timeout usage than the play call, where they got to look. It's like, it's no different than in the NBA. You drop a play at the end of the game. Maybe you get a guy that's wide open, that's not your best shooter. If he misses the shot, it's on him that he missed a shot. It's not the coach that drew up a play where he got someone wide open. Okay, enough of that. I swear I will move on. It's week 18. There's a ton of uncertainty. People, draw your own narratives week type of situation. And that's fine. You're betting your own money. You can bet it on whatever you think is right or whatever you think is wrong. Oftentimes, I think it's very easy to come up with a narrative for either side in games. And I'm not saying none of these exist. Sometimes players will play for a coach that they really liked in week 18. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes players, give a good effort in week 18. Sometimes they've mailed it in. It's part of your job and mine as well to decipher what's happening here over the course of the week. The issue is, if you look at this board, and I'll bring it up shortly, over the course of the week, we've had a ton of line movement, right? And a lot of the angles that you would have played earlier on in the week, they don't exist anymore because the number has moved too far. So for the last time this year during the regular season, but I'll continue doing this till the end of time, while I'm doing this Sunday morning show, I would urge you to bet earlier in the week. I mean, if we just go through the board and you identify the right sides earlier in the week, you got a ton of closing line value this week. Very good numbers. So do that as much as you can, because by the time we get here till Sunday, all of this stuff, or a lot of it, is baked in. Now, is the market super efficient in week 18? No, because we don't know what all these teams are going to do. It's very hard to price a game without knowing the specifics of the game, right? Other weeks, the starters are going to play for a team. Of course, injuries happen, things happen over the course of the game that will change that a little bit. There's variance built in. But week 18, try to guess what the Lions are going to do, or the Eagles, or whatever. And it's you, or in this case, me, against the world on that. And if you feel strongly that a team's going to do something, and it's not baked into the line, you bet it. Opposite way around, if you don't feel strongly, you take the time off. But generally speaking, try to get your bets in earlier in the week, because we get to Sunday morning here. Limits are very high on these games. Liquidity is not an issue. If you wanted to bet Sunday NFL, you could get as much money down as you wanted, really. Well, not as much as you wanted, but you could get easy, big-time bets. There's a reason for that. Books are now confident in their numbers at this point. So, bet earlier in the week. I don't have an edge at this time. It's very likely that you don't either. Either way, I'll break down the board, top to bottom. We'll go rotation number order. Some games are going to be like all over the place. I think Miami's third. Buffalo's third in rotation number because it got flexed to Sunday night. But we'll do that. As a reminder, please play responsibly. I'm here telling you, for me, I'm just coin flipping right now. My bread and butter is betting earlier on in the week as well. Getting ahead of the line moves. That's where my edge is in the NFL. I can't take on the best NFL bettors in the world on Sunday. So be aware of that. I'm just going to give you my thoughts on the game. And as always, before we get into it, if you wouldn't mind, share this link out to your friends, your socials, whatever you want to do. Smash that like button down below. And if you're not subbed here on Forward Progress, this is your first time watching or anything along those lines, hit that subscription button below. Got another live stream tonight. It's a Sunday Night Football watch along for the Bills and the Dolphins. I'll be on here. Got some special guests tonight. Clive Bixby's going to join me. Noops, Eric Eager, Drew Dinsick. It's going to be a great stream tonight. So make sure you're subbed. Hit that notification bell. Last thing, as a general reminder, if you are going to bet on Sundays, if you're going to bet at any time, really, do yourself a favor and get the best number in market. I'm not saying you have to go and deposit into 20 or 30 different sports books. Sometimes 2, 3, 5 will suffice. But one of the most critical aspects to sports betting is line shopping. I will bring up the odds across all the books in my region in Ontario today. And you will notice a lot of the time, Pinnacle is going to have the best price in market. They have lower margins, lower vig. If you're in Canada, you haven't deposited with Pinnacle yet, I'd highly encourage you to do so. All of this stuff matters and adds up over time. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle. If you do sign up in Canada, use code HAMMER to do so. You must be 19 plus, not available in the US. And as always, please play responsibly. Okay, enough preamble. Smash that like. Let's get into it. Bringing up betstamp here. Do a quick refresh. As a reminder, easiest way to improve as a sports bettor, get the best odds. Use an odds comparison tool, like betstamp. All right. Let's start it off at the top here. Cowboys and Commanders, my favorite team, who I'll be hoping clinches clinches the NFC East today. Basically, market has settled in here around 13. Total 46.5. You do have some books at 47. If you're interested in the under there, that is a key number when betting unders, a little bit off market on a couple of spots there. I would have had a lot of interest in betting Washington in this game had it been Jacoby Brissett. We got a very early announcement this week that Sam Howell was going to start. Now, weather forecast, I'll talk about this in a lot of games this week. Looks windy, but different stadiums play in different ways. I don't think there's going to be a huge impact with the weather on the game today. And that's why I think all the early money this week that came in on the under has now been bet back towards the over. Cowboys injury report is a bit messy. 7 players questionable. The notables are their left guard, Tyler Smith. He tore his plantar fascia in his foot 3 times DNP. That's an issue. Their center, Tyler Biadasz, also DNP Friday, although that was due to the flu, I think. Even though the Cowboys need to win this game to win the division, I don't think they'll push anyone to start. They have enough to beat Washington. However, I think the mentality once the game starts is going to be like it is a typical game in another week of the season. They've pulled starters before late in the games when they've been up a lot, but they do have to be up a lot to get to that point. Jonathan Hankins has a chance to return on the D-line. Dorrance Armstrong dealing with an injury as well. The Commanders are a mess. Jonathan Allen is sitting. He has a knee injury. The cornerback group, it's a disaster. Kendall Fuller's out. Tariq Castro Fields. Christian Holmes is on IR. Cam Curl didn't practice Thursday and Friday with a quad injury. It really doesn't make sense for them to push him to play as well. The O-line is in shambles. Charles Leno, Tyler Larson on IR. Andrew Wiley, the right tackle, was 3 times limited practice. He has a hyperextended elbow as well. Basically, with the exception of Sam Cosmi at guard up front, they have major issues. And that's a problem because they pass the ball so much. They've called design pass plays on almost 70% of snaps this season. That's on pace to be the highest share since 2020 when the Houston Texans did that. That's courtesy of True Media. And listen, they're trailing a lot in games. It makes sense. But in a lot of the neutral situations, they do it as well. And they just don't have the O-line or the quarterback. Quarterback doesn't feel pressure. O-line doesn't hold up. That's disastrous. Now, Cowboys laying big numbers on the road. We all know they're 8-0 at home, 3-5 on the road. They've struggled on grass. At the end of the day, even if they do struggle, which, I mean, it's challenging to see that against the Washington defense, I think this could play out similarly to when Dallas went on the road at Carolina, and their offense didn't look great, but they scored a defensive touchdown. They got the job done ultimately at the end of the day. So honestly, kind of flipped my opinion on this game just based off of how the week has played out. There hasn't been too many games where I've flipped stance. The numbers kind of been the same for the most part. But I would only lay Dallas in this game. I'm not taking Washington with Howell behind this offensive line. I know, typically speaking, you want to like fade the narrative in the final week of the season. Dallas needs to win. But I mean, if I had any confidence in the Commanders getting up for Ron Rivera's final game, maybe that would change things. But ultimately, it's going to end up being a pass for me, as are going to be a lot of the games today. But I will break them down as I do usually. Rams and 49ers. Hitman did give this out as one of his two best bets on the Wednesday show this week. Not entirely correct with his handicap. Part of the reason why was he did expect the Rams to sit a bunch of players, which they have announced that they are doing. Carson Wentz gets the start. They've clinched a playoff berth. Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, Aaron Donald, Ernest Jones, also expected to rest. We don't know how the Rams' offense is going to play out. But the other side of the handicap, San Fran has gone with Sam Darnold at quarterback instead of Brock Purdy. Now, I'm not going to do anything with this game. Market kind of at 4.5. I think that there are some extreme scenarios here, like fat tail outcomes, where you can maybe bet a 49ers alternate line in this game. Sean McVay takes these situations like very, very conservatively. The Rams' backups are terrible, for one. It's part of the reason they struggle in preseason, generally speaking, but they just don't have much depth. With the 49ers, they've clinched the 1 seed. We know Sam Darnold's starting. We know Christian McCaffrey's not going to play. Eric Armstead, Tayshaun Gibson, Jair Brown out on defense. But we do know Trent Williams is starting at left tackle. We don't know a lot about this game, but we know he's starting. And that leads me to believe that we're going to at least see the majority of San Fran starters early on in this game, maybe first half. I see a lot of like Niners first half, Cowboys first half stuff. The only issue with just betting those blindly is that they're accounting for this already. It's not like there's when you typically look at a first half line, let's say in like a week 10 game and the full game line, it makes a lot of sense. Some people look at the first half and full game lines in week 18. They're like, what's going on here? It's because it's accounting for this, scenario happening. But generally speaking, I know this was part of Hitman's argument, but how like Kyle Shanahan's been very outspoken about how they've done it wrong in the past. And he does want to play more players today, especially since they have that bye week to recover already. I think there's some scenarios where you can go out and find some alternate lines on San Fran that are just worth a bet. And honestly, they might even still be live, even if San Fran quickly goes to bench players, because their depth is better than the Rams. So, yeah, got some interesting stuff going on in the chat this morning, to say the least. Okay, nothing here for this game. I honestly don't know what we're going to end up with here for these games. Maybe a few plays today. But again, like a lot of the movement has happened. Sunday Night Football. Going rotation number order again. So here we go. Bills and Dolphins. Money came in on Miami this weekend. Now back to Buffalo -3. The total has been bet down to 48. We covered this game on the Forward Progress Wednesday Best Bet show as well. Everyone kind of had an opinion. Suma leaned Bills, Hitman leaned Dolphins. Me and Eager kind of leaned under in this game. Under is taking money. I believe Eager gave out this under as his best bet, actually, getting some good closing line value there. Wind weather looks fine. Might rain, but doesn't look like it's going to. Buffalo took Mitch Morse off the injury report yesterday. So this is like fully healthy Bills, with the exception of the guys on IR, Matt Milano, Trey White, Jordan Phillips. Miami, on the other hand, and like this is why you see the line where it is, beat up. Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert not playing, which makes total sense. They're going to be playing a playoff game next week, regardless of whether they win or lose this game. So they're not risking further injury. Jalen Phillips already on IR. They lose Bradley Chubb. Their linebacker depth is really going to be tested now. Xavier Howard is going to miss this game in the secondary, so you'll see more Eli Apple, which is never a good thing. I know everyone wants opinions on like the best games, generally speaking. I don't have one here. Like, I think this number is fine, really. I'm not super high on Buffalo. More people are higher on Buffalo than I am. They've kind of like, they're kind of a complete 180 of what we thought they would be. To me, the offense is way overrated for the Bills. Like, they easily could have. I mean, I'm telling you, as someone who bet the Patriots over last week, watched the game back in full, the Bills easily could have lost to the Pats last week. Like, Zappe was just dying to give the ball away early on in that game. And you have to credit the Bills defense. But the Bills offense, they don't have the explosive plays anymore. I know it's been talked about ad nauseum now, but I don't know if Stephon Diggs is hurt or what's going on there, but his snap counts are going down and down. They just don't have the receiving weapons, in my opinion, to like really take advantage of the injuries that Miami has on defense. On top of that, you do have Josh Allen dealing with a stinger. Like, they should move the ball. They should be able to run the ball, get things underneath, but the explosive plays just aren't there. Miami on the other side, the same thing for them. Last week, throws downfield, 20 yards or more. Tua went 1 of 5 with a pick. You go back to the previous game against the Cowboys, just 1 of 3. They haven't been testing downfield a lot, but the past couple of weeks, 25th in the NFL in explosive plays. It's just not the same offense without Jalen Waddle. It's just a little bit more easy to key in on Tyreek Hill at this point. Now, he'll have some success because he's great, but ultimately, I think the numbers are fine here. Market appropriately bet the under, in my opinion, and I kind of think that the Bills just have to close 3. Some people talking about earlier in the year as well, when like the Bills tore up this Miami defense, very differently run Bills offense, way more willing to take chances. They scored 48 points. They're 71% success rate. That was nuts. No Jalen Ramsey for the Dolphins at that time. Stephon Diggs was still playing well at that time. But yeah, it's really tough sledding for the Finns right now with the amount of injuries that have built up on defense. I'll give out some props for this game tonight leading up to the game. So we do have a kickoff at 8:20. I'm going live on air just shortly after 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight for the watch along. So I'll break down some props for this game later on tonight if anyone wants to tune in to that. This can't be true. 375 watching, only 40 likes. We got 106 likes, but either way, we got, just over a quarter of people liking. So make sure you smash that like button down below. It goes a long way in terms of helping us grow our content here at Forward Progress. I'll do these forever as long as people are watching, but the more people that are watching, the better it's going to be. Atlanta and New Orleans. Okay. In the chat, if anyone knows Alvin Kamara's status as of yet, please let me know in the chat. I don't know if it's been announced while I've been on air. I tend not to look at my phone while I'm doing this show as, want to maintain the consistency. Okay, Kamara out. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone. Brandon, Connor, Jack, Super Nintendo Chalmers. Great name, by the way, for those who don't get the reference. All right. Saints taking a little bit of money this morning. I woke up, Atlanta was +3, -110. Now it seems like we're headed back out towards the Saints. I think Atlanta's worth a play in this price range for $75. So 76.50 to win 75 at Atlanta +3 -102. I mean, technically, I would even play the -110 if that's all you have access to at your sports book. However, I would just reduce my bet size here. I mean, Saints have been playing better. I get it, Atlanta. Well, let's break it down as a whole. Taylor Heineke dealing with an ankle injury. We don't know who's going to start. Maybe it's been announced already. I honestly don't even care. I think both guys, the median is, or the mean is similar. I think Ritter gives you a wider range on what he can be, turns the ball over. He's a little bit more reckless, but I think his upside is also a little bit higher in games where he has played really well. Heineke is more towards the middle, generally speaking. Big injury on the offensive line for Atlanta. Drew Dahlman. He's one of the best run blockers in the league. His backup, Ryan Newsel, undrafted free agent out of App State. He's inexperienced. It's a significant drop-off. I'm taking that into account. The Saints, though, dealing with some injuries of their own. For me, Alvin Kamara is a big loss. And if you look at the Saints' success rates with Kamara on and off the field this year, they're actually relatively similar. However, if you look at Kamara's or the Saints' EPA per play with Kamara on and off the field, it's pretty sizable gap. They lose some of the explosivity, and that makes sense because Jamal Williams is going to, it's going to be the Jamal Williams show today. Kendry Miller is also banged up for them as well. So he just doesn't have the explosivity in him. He's not that useful out of the backfield. That's an issue. The right tackle, Landon Young, who isn't very good, is out, but that's notable because he was filling in for Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle, who's on IR. So we get maybe a Cameron Irving start at right tackle today. He is truly awful. That kind of helps balance out the Atlanta issues. People really point to the Falcons' home road splits. And you can't ignore them. Like, Atlanta has been much better at home this year, and they struggled on the road offensively. But I think Atlanta in a dome versus Atlanta outdoors, like in Chicago last week, that's a different thing. Like, I don't think it's apples to apples. You put the Falcons in a dome environment where they're comfortable. We saw this against the Colts a few weeks ago. Right? They can move the ball, generally speaking, in those types of situations. For me, the Saints are just not good enough here to be laying this margin. Really. Needing New Orleans to win by margin has been pretty much a tough bet to take for the majority of the season. I don't like Atlanta, but there's a reason that, like, when this division plays each other, the underdog seems to always be live. And it's because none of these teams are very good. This is a reality situation. So I'll take the 3 points with the Atlanta Falcons today, with a game that, like many games this week, has a lot of uncertainty. But I think that that's a valuable number. Just of note right now, Miami just got popped a little bit at Penny. +3 -114 there now. Okay. Eagles and Giants. I'll have a play on this game as well, and it's going to be a small one. But I'm going to take the New York Giants for a half unit at +5.5, -108. This is one where it's just like, I guess I'll put I'll just trust my opinion on the game. Weather looks fine. Might get a little bit of snow. I'm watching right now on TV. It is snowing. Small flurries. I don't think we're going to see anything meaningful. The Giants have a few notable injuries. They have John Michael Schmitz, their center. He's not been good this season at all. He got drafted in the second round. But the G-men have so many offensive linemen on IR that they don't really want to have to shuffle around again. So it's kind of important that he plays. In the secondary, no Deonte Banks, no Jason Pinnock. Couple starters in the secondary. Now, it remains to be seen how the Eagles are going to handle this game and the starters. What we do know for sure is that Devontae Smith is out. So wide receiver 2, 3, and 4 are Julio Jones, Olamide Zaccheaus, Quez Watkins. Massive drop-off. It allows the Giants to key in more on A.J. Brown and make one of these other guys beat them. Julio Jones can't gain separation. Zaccheaus and Quez Watkins, whatever. Darius Slay out at corner. That cornerback room is a disaster right now. James Bradbury is terrible. Kelly Ringo, Bradley Roby, Avonte Maddox is back. Maybe he can make a difference for them. But let's just think about this logically for a second here. The likelihood that the Cowboys are going to be up in the game, I mean, forget the fact that I'm a Cowboys. Just look at the spread of the game, right? It's 13.5. There's a decent chance they're going to be up a bunch in this game. If you're the Eagles, there is no sense in risking further injury if you look at that scoreboard and the Cowboys are up a bunch. Now, the backup there is Marcus Mariota. Good backup. But when we start to look at the rest of the Eagles players, especially in the secondary where they've really been struggling, that could be a big issue for them. The Giants are like, listen, they got lucky last week against the Rams. They got a special teams touchdown that was like a complete fluke altogether. But this is a very different team with Tyrod Taylor. Like, Tyrod Taylor can escape pressure. Tommy DeVito couldn't escape pressure. Tyrod Taylor can hit shots downfield. Tommy DeVito, he could in the first drive of the game, the scripted drive, and then he had no idea what to do. This isn't an Eagles team and a defense that is going to cover by margin a lot anymore. And they just like Arizona moved the ball all over them. The Giants did a few weeks back when Tyrod came into the game for DeVito as well. I think this is just too big. Like, if you told me the Eagles are going to start starters the whole game against the Giants, I think this number's kind of fine, is okay. But like, there's just so much upside here. I think the worst case is a coin flip, honestly. I could be totally out to lunch on that. I've been out to lunch about 1 million times before, but I do think the Giants are worth it here. Of note, Taylor Heineke inactive. Desmond Ridder starting. We'll see how the market reacts to that. I'm very interested to see because, again, Heineke, like, he gives you the higher floor, but he hasn't been good. The thing with Ridder, Ridder is one of those guys where the success rates are strong and the EPA is not, and it's because of the turnovers, especially on the other side of the field. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen there, but I don't mind it, honestly. I think, like, I'm not suggesting Ridder is good. Like, we'll pump the brakes here. I think the sentiment on Ridder is that he's worse than he actually is. Browns, Bengals, I'm not going to spend too much time here at all. Maybe some weather issues. It's very cold in Cincy today. You might get some rain, a little bit of wind. Browns are locked into the 5 seed. They're resting multiple starters. Jeff Driscoll gets the start at quarterback. The closest comps that I have for him in terms of production, if you want like some comparable of what Jeff Driscoll is, are Josh Freeman, Brandon Allen, Drew Stanton, and Thad Lewis. Not good. Amari Cooper's out, Myles Garrett's out, Greg Newsom's out, Juan Thornhill's out. I mean, it's a meaningless game for the Browns. For the Bengals, T. Higgins out. He's got the bad hammy. Chidobe Awuzie at corner dealing with multiple injuries, shoulder, calf, I think something else as well. Anyways, he didn't practice on Friday. A very hard game for me to price. So, like, when you're wondering, someone early in the chat was like, why are the Bengals laying a touchdown? I mean, they're starting the game like with players, and the Browns are not. The Browns are not. That's it for that one in particular. So Saints taking a little bit of money now on the Ridder news. Depending on where this ends up, I actually might add to Atlanta. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't have a sizable difference right now with what we've seen out of Heineke in the last few weeks. Bears and Packers. This one is very, very interesting. The big issue for the Bears this week we'll start with the game. And I think everyone has kind of recognized at this point that you get some value in fading the team that needs to win to get a playoff spot, generally speaking, in week 18. And I believe that that's true. You typically get some value in those spots. However, I really like Chicago at the beginning of the week. And now their cornerback room, in particular, Jalen Johnson, who has been lights out good, is out. Kyler Gordon was limited on Friday with a calf injury, might not play. There's not a ton of depth behind those two. So that shakes things up a bit here for this particular game. If you remember back to earlier in the year, the Bears had cluster injuries in the secondary and their defense was horrible. Now, they didn't have Montez Sweat, but largely the same front seven outside of him. I mean, and that's an impactful player, don't get me wrong. But cluster injuries in the secondary were a real issue. Now you get the Packers on the other side that are also getting some upside this week. Now, my best guess is going to be that Christian Watson doesn't play with his hamstring injury because he went DNP on Friday. I do think Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks are going to suit up. Luke Musgrave was activated off of IR. On the defensive side of the ball, Preston Smith is questionable. It's the final game of the year. I think he'll play through the ankle injury. So you've had a lot of injury movement here, things that have affected the outcome of the game. And I honestly don't think the Bears are a valuable bet anymore at this price with what they're dealing with. To be clear, I would only bet the Bears in this game. I'm not laying this price with the Packers. We've seen money come into the over here, open the week at 44. It's going up a bit, and that's, again, defensive injuries for Chicago, offensive, injury news, I guess, for the Bears as well. But I kind of think that the price is fine now. Would really have liked to bet the Bears here because I think that they're really, really good. But Jalen Johnson, to me, is such a massive loss for this team altogether. I believe he's PFF's number one rated quarterback right now. I don't have him number one for the season, but he's been really, really good, generally speaking. So that's a tough blow for them against the Packers. But still, Bears are nothing. Also of note, just in that game in particular, not fond of Joe Barry as a DC at all. But for some reason or another, this guy has Fields' number, generally speaking. We know about like the Packers winning streak against the Bears. I think it's 9 straight games now. But a lot of that has been on the defense as well. So just of note there for that game. Seattle and Arizona. Where have we settled here? So kind of been pushing all like between 2.5 and 3 all week and hanging out in this range. A total 47.5, slightly above the key number of 47. Probably another game here I don't have a strong opinion on. Seattle's going to be without their right tackle, Abraham Lucas. So Stone Forsythe, say that name 10 times fast, probably starts. That's a pretty rough side of, the right side of the O-line. Anthony Bradford's there. Not going to be great. Is Arizona going to be the team to expose that? Probably not. Although, they have Dennis Gardick, who's plays that primarily on that side, been decent for the Cardinals. On D for Seattle, their nose tackle, Jaron Reed, Jordan Brooks in the linebacking core. They got some limited practices in this week, so I'd expect them to play. For Arizona, there's a big injury, and that's their left tackle, DJ Humphries, who goes on IR. Kelvin Beachum gets the start at left tackle. Similar to how Seattle has issues on the right side of their O-line, Arizona has them on the left because Tristan Colon is their guard there. He's not very good. You get their starting corner, Garrett Williams, out. That means that either one of Starling Thomas or Kytrell Clark get some one-on-one time with DK or Tyler Lockett. No bueno. I think this number's fine, honestly. The big issue for me, Seattle's run defense has become a disaster, and that gives Arizona some hope. I mean, you look at the latter half of the year, and Seattle just can't tackle. Since week 9, week 10 onwards, Seattle's yards per rush allowed after contact is 3.4. That's a big number. That's second worst in the league in that span. I wonder about Arizona's mentality, having beaten the Eagles last week. Gannon's old team. I don't know. I think this is kind of fine. You asked me to pick on the spread. I'm taking probably Arizona at 3 or Seattle at -2.5. Atlanta plus 3.5 in contest, yes, for me as well. All right. Keep it going. We'll get off Seattle, Arizona here. We'll probably have a sip of coffee here as I'm dying this morning. Jets and Patriots. All right. Market settled in here. Pats -2. Total is 29 or 29.5. Obviously, if you're going to see a total like this, there is some inclement weather at hand. That is the case. It's going to be heavy snow, especially in the first half. Winds are a problem as well. Sustained around 15 to 20 miles an hour, gusts of 35 to 40. It's not a disastrous game, but when you consider the offenses as well and the defenses, you get a total that's here, which is, I don't know. Is the total too low, Nathan asks? Is the weather really that bad? Generally speaking, it's not as bad as I would expect for a total this low. However, you have to consider the teams as well. Zach Wilson's out. Trevor Siemian gets a start. Good luck deciphering the Pats injury report again. We know for sure Hunter Henry is out, as is the left tackle, Trent Brown. Vidarian Lowe at left tackle and Antonio Mafi at left guard might be the worst left tackle, left guard combo I've ever seen. That's not an exaggeration. That's disastrous for them against the Jets' defensive line. I don't know what to make of this game. There is the motivational component. Salah's going to be back for the Jets. That's known. It's basically Belichick's swan song. And I'm not the narrative guy, generally speaking, but I actually don't want to bet against that. I don't. Home field advantage fluctuates a lot in week 18. It's not like just standard for every single team. Pat's home field advantage today is probably pretty strong. Yeah, I honestly don't have a lot to say on this game. There's only one team that scored touchdowns on below 10% of their drives this year. That's the Jets. They suck offensively. The Patriots, well, they've gone 3 and out 44% of their drives this season. That's right now the highest percentage of any offense since 2018, which happened to be the Jets. Ugly offense all around. Not a game that I came close to playing at any point this week on anything other than early weather stuff. All right, before I get into the last 5 games on this card today, 2 seconds. If you haven't already, smash that like button down below. We're at 172. Let's get us over 200 during the live stream. That'd be amazing. We got 450 people watching. Shouldn't be that hard. But YouTube loves when people like the content. Give YouTube what they want. Well, give us what we want, really, at Forward Progress. Jags and Titans. Holy geez. I did not expect this, honestly. So the conversation, well, I don't even know where to start with this game. For one, we know that Trevor Lawrence is going to play. At least provided people in the chat are not lying to me, but it seems like Trevor Lawrence is active in this game. No weather to speak of. Looks like Zay Jones is going to play through his hamstring injury. That's a big one for them because Jamal Agnew is on IR. Christian Kirk is eligible to return from IR, but doesn't look like he's going to play today. That receiving core depth is just not there with Tim Jones, Parker Washington, Elijah Cooks. For the Titans, Ryan Tannehill gets a start. I love that. It's his swan song with the Titans. But he operates behind an O-line that has been struggling a lot lately. He'll be hoping that their right guard, Daniel Brunskill, suits up in this game as well. Loads and loads of money on Tennessee this week. Jacksonville's in that spot, right? Need to win to get in. But I can't bet Tennessee at this price. Like a juiced 3.5 now that's a lot. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that got Tennessee at some point this week at better prices. It's hit the point now where like I just don't know that there's value left. I really don't. The Titans are bad. I know they fared well in this situation in the past, right? Vrabel as a dog. This is kind of his spot. They'll have to be able to get Derrick Henry going in order to do anything in this game. They're really struggling now when they can't run on early downs. The Jags, pretty good rush defense. Where Derrick Henry is actually excelled, I mean, it's always been the case for him in his career, but he picks up a lot of his yards after contact. If you actually look at his numbers this year, 79% of his yardage comes after contact. It's pretty absurd. The Jags don't give up much yardage after contact. They make the first tackle a lot of times. So that makes it a little more challenging. Now, what are we going to get out of the Jags offense? I don't know. There's a very clear path to beat the Titans defense is to throw the ball. But they don't have the receivers for one, especially if Zay Jones has a flare-up of that hamstring in game, then it's like a real problem. And on top of that, what are you going to get out of Trevor Lawrence this week? I think it's a big-time guessing game, generally speaking. I mean, if you're forcing me to pick the game, I'm going to pick Tennessee. But I don't think that there's enough to bet this at this current moment in time. Denver and the Raiders. For Denver, Jarrett Stidham show once again behind an O-line without the right tackle, Mike McGlinchey. Las Vegas without Josh Jacobs. So expect to see plenty of Zamir White, some Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden, sprinkled in. Tight end Michael Mayer is also out. Again, so this is like going to be one of those games where you'd have to have a strong opinion one way or another on what certain teams are going to do. But generally speaking, Raiders are taking money this week. There has been like a very positive sentiment out of the Raiders camp about wanting Antonio Pierce back. I honestly do think that that's contributing a little bit to the Raiders' money. Cottage says it, right? This is a narrative game and everyone loves it. I don't want to dismiss that. I do think that there's something real there, especially in a game, final week of the season with two teams that, like, I don't want to say they have nothing to play for, but there's like not a lot of incentive for either of the teams. Player level, for sure. But they want Antonio Pierce back. I think you'll get their top effort. Does that mean that they're going to cover the spread? Certainly it doesn't. What's the Broncos' state of mind now? Eliminated from the playoffs, having to go out on the road at the Raiders with a backup quarterback. I mean, Stidham last week didn't do much on offense, and he didn't get pressured a lot either. He had 36 dropbacks. He got pressured 8 times, 22%. That was the lowest of any Broncos starter this season. What happens now when all of a sudden he faces a Raiders defense, that gets some pressure? I don't know. Issue for me with laying this number is the Raiders offense is just not very good, and it hasn't been for a while. Aiden O'Connell, I know a lot of people were very excited about him coming out of Purdue. He just has not shown me anything at the Raiders at the NFL level that would suggest that he's a competent starting quarterback. This is actually an interesting comment because it's kind of a joke, but might not be. Broncos were partying with the strippers last night. Wouldn't surprise me if a trip to Vegas for the Broncos at this point in the year was not a business trip. Let's put it that way. Minnesota, Detroit. Market has settled here on Lions -4, total 47.5. A lot to decipher in this game. If you've been able to do it, congratulations. I have not been able to do it. Really hard to figure out what the Vikings are going to do here. They have a lot of known injuries already. Mekhi Blackman, Byron Murphy are both out at cornerback. That's issues for them. The right tackle, Brian O'Neill, is going to sit with an ankle injury. Christian Darrisaw, their left tackle, is dealing with an illness. We don't know on him either. That would be catastrophic for them. Detroit, no Jameson Williams, ankle injury. The one thing I'll say about this game is I do believe that Dan Campbell is the type of coach that doesn't believe in resting players necessarily, and like just an old school guy. Let's put it that way, right? With that said, this is Teddy Bridgewater's final game as a pro. He is retiring. He has announced his retirement. I would expect Campbell's like a player's guy, right? I would expect Bridgewater gets time in this game, if not a lot of this game. I'm just saying that, and that's pure speculation on my part. You know, Bridgewater's not very good anymore. He's kind of really gone off a cliff. We saw him with some starts with Miami last year. 2 gloves, not the greatest. But it's a real issue in projecting this game because I have no idea what either of these teams are going to do. Subjectively, I've seen a lot of people bet the Vikings this week. I don't really understand it personally. I think the likelihood that the Lions do play a lot of their players is high, but I don't know that with certainty either. So that ultimately ends up being a pass. Actually, really quickly, I just want to get to this comment. No Ingram, no O'Neal, maybe Ty Chandler unders. Just want to see, I mean, do we even have, there's the props for this week are a disaster. But what do we got for rush yards? Yeah, I don't know. It's a low number. I honestly don't know. It was a good thought. Still could be right. Tampa, Carolina. Made Carolina my best bet on the show on Wednesday. Wind looks like 15 miles an hour sustained. Not going to be too much of an issue. Earlier in the week, Tampa was at risk of not having Shaq Barrett and Carlton Davis. Looks like both will play. Shaq Barrett for sure. The only major issue that remains, Baker Mayfield's rib injury and how he'll hold up. He's active. Got into practice on Friday, dealing with ribs. For Carolina, their left guard, Cade Mays, is out. Mays isn't a household name, but that means that either Ilm Manning, an undrafted rookie tackle out of Hawaii, will start at left guard, or Nash Jensen, an undrafted rookie guard out of North Dakota State, will start at left guard. That's not ideal. J.C. Horn has the questionable tag on D. He was a full participant on Friday. Unless anyone has seen differently, I fully expect J.C. Horn to play. I still see value in this number on Carolina at 4.5. Nothing crazy, but 75 beans on the Panthers. I generally struggle, for one, with laying numbers with very defensive-minded head coaches like Todd Bowles. It's similar to like the way DeMeco Ryans coached that game last night. I talked about the Steichen stuff off the top, but when you run, and you're doing so like with a fairly decent success rate on early downs against the Texans, you actually, Eric Eagers talked about this before as well. You actually like trick the other coach into thinking he's in like a defensive slugfest, which is what happened with the Texans. The Texans could have came out and threw the ball like 40 times yesterday. They would have won the game by 30 points. But they kind of think they're in this field position battle type of game. Bowles is another coach like that, right? They don't win by margin very much. Baker Mayfield in his career does not win by margin very much. I talked about an earlier meeting this season between these two teams. It was at the beginning of December. Tampa was at home. They closed -3.5 in that game. Now, there were some things that played into that number, and Tampa Bay had some defensive injuries in that game, which they're not going to have today. But we've seen a decent adjustment here with the home team flipped. Also, we have to remember when these teams played earlier, and like Carolina for the majority of the season, did not have a healthy defense. Now that they do, it's a game changer. Last week's score against the Jags, they got blown out, did the Panthers. A little bit misleading. And the only reason I'll say that is because their kicker, Eddie Pinheiro, who's not going to play today. They have another kicker on the roster, Matthew Wright. But Eddie Pinheiro got hurt in warmups last week. And every time Carolina got to the other side of the field and stalled, they had no kicker. So they had to go for these 4th and 10s and 4th and 12s and whatever. And that's just like not going to be their offense. They're just not going to do that. They're going to struggle doing that well. Additionally, Jacksonville was getting a lot of pressure last week. We saw back-to-back games where Carolina against Atlanta, against Green Bay, Bryce Young was airing it out. 7.0 yards per attempt, 8.7 yards per attempt. Last week, 3.5 because of the pressure. I think they're going to do a little bit better job this week against Tampa Bay. I'm not sold on the Bucs defense. I'm just not sold on the offense being able to win by margin because it's too conservative. Ultimately, they do the same thing every week. They're dying to run the ball. They just want to run the ball. They don't get into that game state of wanting to pass until they need to. Believe me, I understand Carolina's bad. KC and the Chargers, final game here. Some KC money this morning. I'm a little bit perplexed with this game because I have a very strong lean to the Chargers here, but I'm not positive I can find a way to pull the trigger on them. Blaine Gabbert starts for the Chiefs. No Isaiah Pacheco, no Rashee Rice, no Kadarius Toney, no Donovan Smith, no L'Jarius Sneed. That's what we know for sure. We also know Travis Kelce will play a little bit to get his 16 yards, and then he's going to fuck off basically after that. But we don't know how the Chiefs will play this. We have some historical precedent with Andy Reid. I think that most, if not all the key players for the Chiefs are going to rest for most of this game. That's why I'm a little bit confused about the movement. Obviously, someone feels differently, or they just have no faith in the Chargers. Chargers are still without Keenan Allen. They're missing their left guard, Zion Johnson. They lost to the Broncos last week. Ugly game. But I have to believe that Easton Stick with starters is worth more than Blaine, more than. I mean, this is it. Like, the Chargers offense is bad. I get it. I'm not going to bet it. I haven't bet this game. I'm not going to bet it. But I have a very, very strong lean to the LA Chargers here. And this is, again, just my presumption of how I think the game will play out. But I don't think you're seeing Kansas City. You're seeing second and third stringers, in my opinion, for the majority of the game. Maybe that's still good enough because the Chargers are certainly an absolute disaster. Quick recap of my picks for today. 3 of them are locked in. Carolina plus 4.5, $75. Falcons, we didn't really get that bad of a number at the end of the day. Probably should have waited 2 seconds for Heineke to take warm-ups, but $75 there, and we're going $50 on the Giants. So 3 plays at the current market numbers. Quick review of what's going on here. And I'll give my lean on the game for those who are finalizing their pool picks. That, first of all, if you're finalizing pool picks, use the market first and foremost as your gold star. your North Star, I should say. Not me, but Dallas, Washington. Originally wanted to play Washington in some capacity earlier in the week. After seeing injury reports, especially on defense, and Jonathan Allen out, it's a Dallas or nothing game. It's nothing. Rams 49ers. I mean, I'd be pretty close to playing the 49ers here. A lot of uncertainty. Certainly not taking the Rams in any capacity. Bills, Dolphins. Money coming in on Dolphins since the start of the stream. I don't know what I would do if this got to 2.5. I'm kind of like my true number is kind of between 2.5 and 3. And I think the total's been bet into place sufficiently now. So not a strong opinion there. Forced me to pick it. I'm taking the Dolphins. I like the Falcons against the Saints, even with Ritter. Eagles, Giants. I made my case on the, I mean, I could totally be wrong and out to lunch here, but I just do not see the Eagles going wire to wire starters. And I mean, this number is accounting for some benching, but I think it's too many points. Browns, Bengals, no opinion. I guess depending on what number you have, 7.5, I'd probably take Browns. 7, I'd take the Bengals. Bears, Packers, like really close on the Bears, but I'm now off of it because of Jalen Johnson being out, which is a significant blow. A little bit of under money also since the beginning of the stream. So we reached our high point and a little bit of under money coming in. But I think the Bears are live, certainly. Seahawks, Cardinals, no strong opinion here. For pool plays, if you got a 3, I'd take Arizona. If you got 2.5, I'd take Seattle. Jets, New England. New England or nothing for me. It's ultimately nothing. Jags, Titans. Really did not expect this much game day money on the Titans with Lawrence ruled in, but that's what we got. And Titans or nothing. Broncos, Raiders, no opinion. This was just like a regular week 14 game. I'd absolutely take the Broncos at this price, but I don't know what kind of effort you're going to get out of them. Probably pick the Raiders in pools. Detroit, Minnesota, no idea what's going to happen there. Slight lean Detroit. Tampa, Carolina, played Carolina. KC and the Chargers lean very strongly to the LA Chargers in that one. All right. That's it for me. Just over an hour today. On the way out the door, please smash that like button, but also make sure you sub here to Forward Progress. Click that subscribe button right down below. Got stream tonight. It's not our usual Sunday night Forward Progress stream. It's going to be a live watch along of the game. So I'm going live probably right around 8:05 tonight for the 8:20 start. Joined by a bunch of guests, Clive Bixby, who you've seen on Sunday nights with me here before. Alex Christensen, Noops is going to join me. Got Eric Eager. We got Drew Dinsick, the whale capper in the fourth quarter. For those wondering, absolutely, we will talk about potential playoff matchups. These streams just tend to be all over the place. We watch the games, we talk. It's a bunch of sports fans, a bunch of NFL fans in one spot, watching games, talking games. But certainly, if we start to see some early lines, we will talk about them a little bit. All right, that's it for the Pizza Buffet here on Sunday morning. I wish everyone the best of luck in the final week of the regular season. If you haven't checked out Pinnacle Sportsbook, make sure you do so. Great odds in market. I don't know what else to tell you. Got to get the best prices, people, when you're betting on sports. Extremely important. Even if you're not a good bettor, I mean, it'll cut your losses if you're getting good prices. Everyone, unless you're opposite of me, I wish you the best of luck today. If you're opposite of me, what can I say? At least one of us will win. I'll see you back here, 8:05 p.m. Eastern time tonight. This has been the Pizza Buffet on Forward Progress, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. Good luck with your bets today.